Hello, everybody out there. To everyone watching Jim and I on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever else it's hacked and uploaded, because this will be an announcement that will break the internet. Jim, if you don't mind, I just want to get right to it. I don't want to pull you.
I don't think you should mess around anymore. I think you should just get right to it. Yeah.
They've been waiting for this for so long. It's going to be anyway. Jim and I have been tasked and put on the development team for Half-Life 3. It's right. It is happening. It's happening soon.
We're working on the writers or like the sort of narrative design of it. I've learned a bit of coding, and I'm going to be on part of the dev team itself.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. I think it's a big step up for us. As you all know, we're huge Half-Life fans, constantly talking about it, referring to it, working it into the various videos that we do. So we're really excited about this.
And while Jim, he has a lot of experience with it. I've actually never played the Half-Life series, which is why they brought me on, because it was an outside, kind of an outside point of view, fresh point of view, not to give the same old thing. Anyway, so there's that. And that, of course, is complete bullshit. But y'all already knew that. So, but we want to bring someone else out here to make the actual big announcement, because we want to make sure that everybody knows that what they're seeing on screen right now, we're going to be in somewhat part of.
Sure. Yes.
So, you want to go ahead and come on out here, Darcy? Huh?
Hey folks, I know it's not as big news as Half-Life 3, but I'm really excited for this announcement. Oh my gosh. So hey everybody, I'm Darcy Ross from Monty Cook Games, and we're really, really excited to finally announce something that we've been talking to these fools about for a long time. And that is that they're going to be writing the introduction to Arcana of the Ancients. So this is, Monty Cook Games makes Numenera, a game about Earth a billion years in the future with science fantasy and weird technology and stranger creatures. And after being asked for many, many years, we're finally bringing it to 5e, bringing the equipment and the creatures and also the setting now. And we are so excited that we couldn't think of people who got 5e and also got, science fantasy in Numenera better than, unfortunately, better than these folks. So we had to go to the best, and this is the best we could do.
Well, thank you, Darcy. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you had to scrape the bottom of the barrel for us. But in the world of the ninth world, that is.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all that's left.
There we go.
Very
Picking
true.
through the detritus of prior worlds. It is a metaphor for what we do at WebTM, which is we pick through the work of better people and present it to our followers so that they can enrich their lives and their games. So yeah, I'll make that connection. We're super excited about this because, for both Pruitt and I, science fantasy is like at the heart of what we love about role playing in general. It's weird, it's different, it's a mix of all sorts of different genres. And it's great, right? And it comes in all kinds of flavors and styles, and you can do a lot with it. And then the fact that it's like Monty Cook Games, someone who's like as an individual has like been a big influence on our role playing, and then as a company, MCG is like makers of like these amazing games that we love playing. So it's a win-win-win win for us.
Yeah, it's literally all win all the time.
Yeah, excited about this.
It feels really fun for me because I think, our whole company is such big fans of all your work. And so I feel like the mutual kind of fan personing that's going on is a really good feel. So what are you excited about to dive in here? Is there anything about Arcana that the Ancients that you're really hyped for, or you think you'll have some particular insight on?
Oh, I am hyped for the monsters myself, if only because there's so many great just so many great ones from the ninth world that I think will present jaded players or those who've fought their way through the monster manual with something different and new and weird, something new to figure out, a puzzle in addition to an adversary. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to how ciphers are incorporated into 5e, because it's an idea that I love, the idea of just these single use magic items.
Yeah.
and I've tried to incorporate some in my game a little bit, but just the mechanics of that, and just making your own, because I think it'll be another thing where people go just absolutely bonkers making ciphers for 5e. Are you kidding? It's gonna be nuts.
It's gonna be a beautiful mess.
Oh yes. It really fits in with the kind of play ethos that we advocate, which is a looser sort of attitude towards rules balance and an embracing of things that are going to change your game, and you can do something fun and interesting with. And it's like the promise of all of that was what really got us excited for Arcana of the Ancients.
And we were really excited too for kind of your perspective on deep time and history, right? With like that background that you have. So you've already spoken about that at length in the video that you did. But I'm really excited that you're bringing all that to the to the introduction, and to teaching people how to how to use this text that we're going to put together. I think you're really going to be a really cool bridge for folks who are already playing and loving 5e, or just getting into it. I think you really master taking people either deeper into their 5e games and many other systems of games too, but you folks really rock you rock 5e. So
thank you very much. It's a system that's I found is robust, and I'm interested to see how the concepts will translate in terms of like how they're implemented in Numenera and the cipher system in general over to 5e. And it's that I'm happy to help build that bridge because they're two great games, and it's like, why not combine them? Why not cross-pollinate a bit?
Well, it's especially given Monty Cook's history with D&D itself,
right?
And the fact that to me the games they're intertwined irrevocably because of that. The feel is there in the cipher system. And thus, the Numenera setting, but just seeing people try more out, that's what we always try to push. I mean, like 5e is the big, the big boy on the block, but it's okay to look around a little bit, and so I think this will be a great gateway game, get people, maybe have a look across the street there.
Certainly. Really. So it's an exciting prospect and a book that I'm really excited about. And guys, we're really close to getting that Beneath the Monolith stretch goal as well. So
yep,
that's not that far away.
I think I did my big backing finally this weekend. So I will. I'm not gonna say what level I backed at, but I'll get y'all's autographs when I see you.
That's right. Yay. I hope we get to play together sometime. That's my real ask that I'm hoping to string together somehow. Get a real nice. I'm gonna play some really trashy Hobbit or something. I'm gonna play like a nice halfling exploring the Ninth World. A good trash Hobbit, or maybe bring in some other 5e races, right? Like a Githyanki. I'm really excited by all the mashup options that you can have. In addition to playing, I love the Numenera setting, but I'm also excited to see worlds collide.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I don't know, it's great all around. I think if everybody out there watching wants to ask us questions, they can be related to the project or just sort of topics about it or just whatever. Go ahead and type your question in all caps. We've got some people looking at chat, and hopefully we'll get to the ones we can. But we're just we didn't want everybody out there to think that this was a prank or an April Fool. We were also super eager to let everybody know and to just share this with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, look at this overlay that Darcy spent all this time. This is real. But let's see here.
You got anything yet?
I'm having a look-see at these.
I've only seen one question that's about will this be incorporated into a streamed campaign?
Ooh,
it would be a while before it's here, so lots of time to think about it.
Yes. So undoubtedly, like both Pruitt and I run games that are firmly within the science fantasy genre, and there's undoubtedly going to be something in Arcana of the Ancients that we can use in both of our games. Now, whether we stream like the intro adventures that will be in there and like play through those, that's another matter.
Hey, I want to get this question in right quick from Luke 408417. Can Jim's voice have his babies or have their babies?
Depends, right? Like I already have a progeny and one's enough right now. So
Oh my gosh.
Right. So we've had some people who are coming in afterwards. We are making an announcement about a team up between WebDM and Monty Cook Games. WebDM is going to be writing the announcement, or sorry, not the announcement, the introduction for Arcana of the Ancients, and we're also just geeking out and having a good time thinking about the book and what's in store. So we're happy that you joined us.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. So
here we go. Question in the chat there, Jim.
All right. So y'all are writing now. Open to writing for other Kickstarters in the future. We are open to working with and writing as much as we can. Like, there's something about writing and the RPG just hobby that go hand in hand. And when you're a DM, you sort of create all this stuff for your campaigns, and kind of like the next step is finding a way to turn that into something that can be presentable. That's one thing, but also just like, I don't know, exploring the ideas is also another good way to do it. So yeah, I think that's a good one. Any others, Pruitt?
Oh, I'm throwing them in the chat, man. There's one there that would be great for Darcy. If you can maybe ask that from Crimson Hawk. What spectrum of CR are we looking at from Beasts of Flesh and Steel?
Good question. So we have, I think it'll run the gamut, but I have been noticing, so we actually have a couple sort of mock laid out creatures up in our updates right now. So if you check out the Kickstarter updates, we've got the Ravage Bear and we put somebody else delicious up there. Oh yeah, the Disassembler, which is a mean, nasty beast. The Disassembler especially is extremely high CR, and even some of the wondrous items and tech we have, some people were like, "Whoa, that's way more powerful than." Are you sure you statted that correctly? And so, I think you're right in thinking that if you're taking your traditional fantasy 5e game and you're going and exploring and uncovering this astronomically advanced ancient civilization that is so advanced technology to seem like magic, you are going to get your highs are kind of higher, but I would also expect to have lots to play with at the sort of more early career adventurer range. So you will find and gosh, the Disassembler should have the CR on it, so I don't have it on hand, but
let's see. I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, the highs are higher, and same with the wondrous items, right? There's going to be some really big, powerful stuff to mess around with, but often those big powers are going to be finicky and old, or they deplete, right? So especially the ciphers, that's one of the magic of the cipher system, is that you give your players these incredibly powerful things, and then they break or they get used up because it's this ancient tech. So it's less often game breaking. So
I'm looking at like the Disassembler right here.
Yeah.
First off, you're right about that. Like the fact that they're one-use items,
right?
Allow all these different effects in there, and not like, oh, they're going to do this every time. It's like, just the ones. I really love that about ciphers. But the Disassembler here, I love the fact that it does hit. I think it hits a bit above maybe where the CR is, but anybody who plays 5th edition knows that CR is a ballpark.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got CR5, 104 hit points, AC 18. A lot of really cool abilities dealing with the armor and weapons of the opponents that it fights, right? That's what I love about a trick monster or something that's it's not just a hit point and attack,
Yeah.
And yeah, this looks like a really cool. this was one that I can definitely see being in using in the post-apocalyptic magical wasteland of Lambtree Two Rivers. It's like a creature that just takes things and adds them to themselves. That's really cool.
Somebody also asked, about Thundar, and if you're thinking Thundar, you're absolutely thinking like Arcana of the Ancients. The book that book itself is really a toolkit. It's got some adventures, but it's got a lot of like tech and beasts and ideas and some mechanics for how to bring more science fantasy into your game, which you could do via these adventures, or you could do by saying, hey, I just want some tools to make a cool Thundar setting. And if you're thinking about Thundar, if you're thinking about what are some of the other really good? There's another cartoon that's
Herculoids was one that's kind of like older than Thunder, but like Masters of the Universe.
He-Man Masters of the Universe
would be a fit for this as well, right?
Yep. And so this toolkit is going to be great for that. And beneath the Monolith will be the book that, if we fund, is like take the setting of Numenera and go play there and convert a lot of that. So that hopefully we fund it and you won't have to do all that yourself. So
yeah.
Yes.
So Luke, to the question of how close is this to Spelljammer, it's like, well, I mean, you could have flying ships in there, sure. And there's certainly kind of magitech, so I would say it's pretty damn close. It's probably why Numenera really drew Gemini's eye originally. Is because it has that science fantasy feel to it.
It's got that science fantasy feel. Numenera like firmly is planted in like this is the real world, like just a billion or more years in the future. So it has that kind of grounding in physics and everything that like Spelljammer leans more into like the medievalism, but like aesthetically, mechanically, I could see like everything here being useful for that. Or even like a weird blend where you've got like a spell jamming magic ship that shows in orbit around Earth billions of years in the future.
Yeah, you're taking a Spelljammer ship into like an ancient, like space station, right? Like an ancient advanced space station. That'd be a fun mashup.
Oh yeah. It's just like this. Here's my flying galleon that just like completely ignores all the laws of your reality.
Yep.
Yeah, it has its own anti-reality drive.
Yeah.
That's how that works, right? You just put anti in front of it, and then it works. Okay, so Ollie Wright has a good question here. Will you use 5e classes or create new and similar, or ergo to Cubicle 7's Adventures in Middle Earth? How they kind of altered things. Bit.
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't like nailed down exactly how everything's gonna lay out, right? We don't have an exact table of contents. This was very much a, will people be excited about this, and if so, about what? And that sort of shapes a lot of our products, which makes it helpful. But we have been asking a lot about, are you we definitely want to give more have some character options in there, and so I think it might be more along the lines of, if you're a bard, maybe there's a different school that you can, take under that has to do with dealing with this tech. So it might be, it's probably like character options that are new to spice up your existing sort of core classes. But also, I'm curious what we might do if we are converting the Numenera setting, because Numenera has its own kind of class equivalents, right? The Jack and the Nano, and they have foci, right? And so we might have ways of bringing that in to maybe be different kinds of classes that might be more specialized to really digging into that science fantasy. We're not sure yet, but definitely if you have some like thoughts or asks, like we listen to those. So come talk to us about what you want to see.
Well, let me tell you something, Darcy. If you were able to figure out a way to create general classes, but you can have subclasses, ergo foci. You can put those on any of the general classes. So it's not like you have the arcane trickster for a rogue. You have the rogues, and then you can pick the spellcasty version of that, or the more fighty one, or the and that's your focus. So if you were able to do like a completely separate
combinatorial
subclass system, like that would be the way, I think, to make that as close to, because backgrounds already kind of feel a little bit like descripters,
right? Oh yeah,
totally. You have the three parts there.
Your
background, your class, your subclass, your descriptor, your type and foci.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
That's a great point.
Yeah. I think that's pretty like just seamless sort of way to kind of integrate the two. Because I was thinking that as well. There's some characters you can make. Like we played the first time we actually played Numenera, we ran Tales from the Infinite Staircase. Just like I cracked open the second edition book, converted as we played using hit as a rough estimate for Rumble, and was like, we had a Lantern Archon, a Modron, characters that were very difficult to Dungeons and Dragons that were, at the time, this is before the generic Cypher rulebook.
Right.
They were just like in Numenera. And I was thinking about that, like, you can have, like, say, beings made of pure energy, and it fits, and they work right alongside a guy that's just, like, good with weapons.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a cool way to do it, or to, like, sort of explore that idea, because I do like the fact that because they're, the people of the Ninth World live in this, that hill over there is a ancient tech factory that's just covered in whatever, and like the dirt around here isn't even dirt, it's pulverized stuff. That they might have something that's just different about them, that they just have an ability or an affinity for something. So I like that. That's really cool. Oh man, I'm just okay, sorry, all right, I'm because you can also have it you could also do like they do in Ravnica, where you have like access to certain abilities tied to a certain, like, your particular background.
Oh yeah.
So like people from this region have, this sort of affinity with this kind of, I don't know, animals or something like that because of something in the environment that affects them, or some kind of ancient magic that's still at work that kind of like makes these connections possible.
Yeah, 5e is so flexible. I do love this system. It's I played a lot of like second edition Planescape. It's been, before 5e came around, I was playing a lot of that. And there's a lot of weird stuff in second edition, and I think nobody's table who plays second edition looks the same at all. You just skip rocks, you touch the bits that are working for your table, and you leave the rest of it behind. But 5e was the most that felt like what we were playing at my second edition game, where it was just it didn't get in the way. It's flexible in that way, like you said, where you can have Ravnica coming in, giving you character abilities from this other place, and nothing really gets out of whack. It's sort of it kind of hums along without collapsing in on itself. So I'm excited to see how we tinker with that flexible system that Monty already, was a huge hand in designing. So that'll be really fun.
Oh, sure. Well, and then we've also got like Bruce and Sean, who are also working on it, who have the experience with Dungeons and Dragons in that environment. And so, like, I saw a question here from someone says, "How do we use elements of Numenera for normal D&D world? Can a traditional fantasy world suddenly jarringly transition to a complex, ancient sort of magic-y science?" And I'm like, I mean, you would be introducing something new. Like, let's take a world, not even like Forgotten Realms, because to me, like, Forgotten Realms already has this baked in, right? Like, it's about like there's like 8 different dwarven empires that have existed over like 50 or 60,000 years.
Yeah,
it's already really old, but like Greyhawk is kind of more. I think it's more of analogous to, say, our own world, and it's like just forces and nations, and it's like if you were to introduce that kind of past, you're not like changing anything about the present necessarily, right? You can still have those traditional fantasy elements. They can still relate to each other in a traditional fantasy way. It's just their understanding of their own past has changed. And like these things they understand as magic and as mystical forces in their world, like they might uncover a bit of the truth about them. Like, oh, it might not be so, magical.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, is the distinction there that important? Like, I mean, that's my personal views. Like, what is magic and how does it interact? And if you have the ability to manipulate the forces of creation and in ways that defy explanation, how's that not? That's magic, right? So I don't mean to make light of the question. I think you could, like, if you were like, no, like, okay, guys, we were doing this high fantasy, like magic is mystical, sort of like traditional D&D, and now it's all hard sci-fi. Like that would be a hard transition. Right. But if you introduce like bits of it and slowly, I think that's how you make that transition stick and not seem weird.
And this book's going to have a lot of advice on that and the multiple ways that it could look at different tables, right? Some people say, secretly, all of the magic has been tech. Some say, well, there's still magic. There's just also tech that is really hard to tell which one it is, based on the effect. So, and the adventures are specifically about over there in this uncovered place, wherever in your world that over there might be, underneath some continent we never explored, something crashes, opens up some ancient bit of the ancient past. And so at its lowest effect, it could be all this ancient tech and stuff is sort of seeping out of that place and coming and interfering with the rest of your world. So in case you don't want to like uncover it in the places that you've already been, basically the adventurers say, what happens when the Arcana of the Ancients comes and like messes with your day? It's not just staying in its own land now, it's woken up. So
and you can see it being like, maybe this is about ancient and powerful and inexplicable magic. It could easily be that this is like the past of another world trying to supplant your own world's past. And it's like it's like almost a metaphysical invasion, or an epistemological invasion.
Well, I'm like saying that you totally triggered me here. Imagine instead of timelines going, into the future, what if a past timeline that didn't actually happen? That's what's coming to assert itself.
Oh yeah,
because something in an alternate time past, like they made something so monumental, it both erased them from existence and shot them forward in time to your current game.
Yes.
You're welcome.
That's really good.
Yeah. And that's just like, how like to me, that's so much cooler than just like an ancient evil is trying to get into our world.
Right.
It's got a bit of ambiguity to it. It's complex, it's weird, it's different. There's a lot of different ways to interact with it.
Much more Wrath of Khan, refugees from another time or place, kind of very powerful refugees coming to mess up your day. Very complicated characters.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So it's those things that I like, and a lot of it is just how you describe it. I've found that, particularly with a game like 5th edition, where I think we see 5th edition and we subconsciously or without really thinking about it, like impart a lot of flavor into it. Whereas like it's really just a series of mechanics and stuff. And a headband of intellect could be a magical headband that summons a knowledge spirit to you, or it could be like a cybernetic enhancement that just makes you smarter. And it's all in how you just describe things in a lot of ways.
So I think Driston Ross has the most important question here. So since Half-Life is essentially ancient Arcana by now, great. Can we expect references in the upcoming book?
Yeah.
I will say that anything that you see that looks like it came from Half-Life, then that is a reference, my friend.
Oh my gosh. You heard it here first, folks.
If that's how you see it, then that is the way it is. That is the beauty of these books.
I think that a bunch of short-sighted researchers attempting to pierce the veil of reality and it going disastrous is right up.
Classic Numenera. It's a Tuesday. It's called a Tuesday.
That's what they uncovered on Tuesday.
Yes.
Right. These are the Aeon priests that didn't quite make the tenure track.
Yeah.
And want to know where the Iron Wind came from? Well, now we do.
There you go. Exactly. Speaking of just sort of like for people where it's like maybe science fantasy just isn't their kind of thing. As someone who's played these games a long time, I've not met anybody who doesn't just go like, God, not another elf, not another ye old fantasy. It can a palate cleanser. Can be a nice refresher before returning to those things that you really like.
Yeah.
Keeping it very interesting and like just come on, you're in good hands. Come on. So I could speak more on it, but I don't want to take.
I was gonna like the last couple of questions that we have here because we've gotten a lot of people asking pretty much the same general thing of what kind of book this is going to be, which it's going to be a But Darcy, do you want to give another brief summary?
Yeah. So it's doing double duty, which I think kind of can be a little confusing at first. So it is both a source book and a module, and part of that is because we think one of the easiest ways to, the source book part is about, hey, here's a bunch of cool creatures, magical items / ciphers / tech, new abilities and advice, and maybe a little bit of mechanics on how to bring science fantasy to your traditional fantasy games. So it's going to have a lot of stuff to draw from. But then one of the easiest ways to introduce this stuff, right, is that you go to a place and you unlock some vault, and all this weird past tech and magic and creatures and stuff, you've kind of opened it back up to the world, and so then it sort of seeps out of your game. So there's a series of adventures where your PCs are the first to go hear about it, or go basically uncover this mysterious past. And so that's what the module sort of takes you through. So it just makes it really easy to be like, oh, I want to have science fantasy, but I don't want to do all the work of how to make it work for my campaign or my world. This is going to be kind of a nice little module that you can slot anywhere, and basically open up all this use of the rest of the source book. So you can take that or leave it. I think the book is now, some of the stretch goals for the Kickstarter have added more content, more ciphers and artifacts and oddities, and have added additional adventures. So now the book is starting to get a bit bigger. We don't have an exact page count because we tend to undersell our page counts anyway. So it's going to be a nice, hefty book, at least well within the 200 pages, somewhere in the 200s. And of course, the Kickstarter's already funded an additional book just of more monsters, which is great. So there's going to be a whole other Beasts of Flesh and Steel book. And now we're looking on getting, a lot of people are wondering, is this just Numenera for 5e? And while Arcana of the Ancients is not, it's again this source book plus adventures to slot anywhere. We are currently working on a stretch goal for Beneath the Monolith, which is the Numenera setting converted to 5e if you just want to dive in to that ninth world goodness. So I hope
29,000 away. So you guys are really
it's getting there.
Yeah, there we go. I don't know. I'm gonna bet that you're probably gonna get there.
I hope so. There was one thing that I kind of we were just sort of talking, and I saw someone else mention is in many ways this is heightening and drawing out some of the influences that have been in Dungeons and Dragons for a long time.
Yes.
Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is there. Some of the first appearances of Mind Flayers, they're very much sci-fi monsters that have become fantasied over the editions. Of course, Jack Vance is a big influence on D&D. And if you're looking and seeing how D&D has evolved over the years, those influences are still kind of there, and drawing them out and introducing new stuff for them, and sort of saying, yeah, you can have this alongside these creatures from another dimension that that operate differently than our own. It's just adding more to that there.
Yeah, and I mean even 5e, there's Warforged there.
Oh yeah,
these are just robots, right? There's robots in your D&D. So
in my D&D,
where's my pearls? I need to clutch them. But also just magic items like Qualish's machine or apparatus. It's just that just screams Numenera to me. It's just this old whatever you want to call it.
Doohickey.
It's a doohickey that you can get in and move around and pick stuff up and whatever. And it's that doesn't, who makes that anymore? Nobody in 20,000 years.
It's I thought Qualish. See this, and this is where we can kind of get into it, because Qualish, I think in Greyhawk is a mage that went to the Barrier Peaks.
Oh wow!
And found all of these technological marvels, and then was how do I recreate that? I think in 5th edition he'd be like an artificer or something. But there's God's weird technology in Dungeons and Dragons in both Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms. Of course, Eberron is chock full of to me, Eberron is a couple of steps centuries away from being that science fantasy kind of. They're about to build spaceships and travel to their planar moons that they have. It's there, and I think it's like it just provides like a lens that you can see the rest of your game with. And there's also the Infernal Machine of Lum the Mad, someone mentioned in chat, is another famous D&D contraption.
Oh yes. So somebody had a question here. Will there be any tips for incorporating base D&D monsters and items into the Arcana of the Ancients paradigm?
I think that's such a good question. That's getting to a level of granularity that I don't exactly know, but again, that's the kind of feedback that we always look for about, what are people going to use this for, which is, a great perk to kickstarting things, as we get to have that feedback early. But, I think if you look at some of the art that's on the Kickstarter page and stuff, we love the feeling of that, of how things mash up, right? We've got a lot of really cool, like, your dwarf interacting with this strange, living organism technology piece, right? And you've got, I think there's a picture of one that has a drow sort of, like kick flipping off of an enormous technological creature. And so I think we're thinking a lot about ways that you can really marry the two and play off of them. And so I suspect like that Monty's definitely going to be writing about that in sort of the advice section. I don't know if there will be specific like, one-to-one, here are good opportunities, but in general, I think Monty's going to talk a lot about, okay, how do you, if you are bringing these components in, how do you make it, what are the fun opportunities you have to make it play off of the traditional fantasy big hitters, of creatures and also, species and things. So yeah. And like magic items too, right? Like what happens if you put some horrible spatial warping device inside a bag of holding, right? I think those questions, they come up. So we'll have at least some section of advice on that sort of thing.
That's how you create a warp drive.
An anti-warp drive.
Yeah.
It makes it special. I don't know. I mean, if you guys have any other questions, I know we still got people who are arriving just now. So check the description of the video. That'll give you the update. But we are chatting about Arcana of the Ancients. WebDM is going to be writing the introduction to that. We're just kind of like answering questions about the project and geeking out about the idea. So.
Yep. Good moment.
Let's see. Someone says, I know nothing about Numenera or Shadowrun, so I'm just going to pretend that I'm rich. Numenera and Shadowrun kind of have a similar, Shadowrun is that same kind of mixing of genres, in this case, cyberpunk with fantasy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of crossover even there, because you've got cybernetics, you've got the idea of like a data sphere, right? Totally. One of the things that I always liked to sort of like view magic from a science fantasy perspective was like, if someone who has like, just the idea of like nanobots that are part of them, that are almost like have evolved alongside humanity or whatever the dominant sort of humanoids are, and like having a biological connection to machines that might be in orbit or deep underground. And it's like that, but your understanding of it is that you commune with the spirits of earth and sky,
right,
or something like that. You can cause earthquakes, you can know things that you shouldn't know, or call down lightning that even on a clear day. And like, to me, it's that kind of that has the same sense of wonder and excitement
and mystery
and discovery and mystery.
Yeah.
That, like, how do I, whether they're just like, oh, well, I summon an elemental and I talk to it. And,
right.
I don't know. It's almost magical by making it less overtly magical in my mind. So,
less understood too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I think for me, it's that. It's the sort of the mystery of it that makes it, the mystery makes it magical in my mind. There you go. So yeah, I guess unless anybody has any more questions, we're happy to just chat and hang out. I don't know how long we want it to go.
It's up to you folks. I don't know, where are we at? We've been talking for a bit. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I chatted for a good while.
Good.
But we're happy to hang out with you guys, and just keep chatting. And if you've got more questions, throw them in. I'm not sure if we have anybody checking the Facebook chat.
I'm checking.
Okay, yes.
Yay, thank you, Emma. Somebody had a question about Rue Doggy had a question on how to create your own spells. Will there be a section on that?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure about that, but a big part of Numenera, so Numenera is Earth, 1 billion years in the future. And so the idea is that at least 8 great civilizations have risen to enormous technological prowess. They've rearranged celestial bodies. They've seeded the Earth with, microscopic nanites that are little robots that do stuff at a distance, spooky action at a distance. They have, they've changed the structure of the Earth, and they've put, have huge floating obelisks and all sorts of, strange creatures and tech lying around. But for some reason, one reason or another, all of those 8 great civilizations have died, ascended, were run off, disappeared in a poof of logic, whatever it was. And so you play, usually humans, bafflingly back on the Earth, in the bones of these ancient civilizations. And so Numenera just came out with a new core book set, Numenera Discovery, which is a lot of the go out and explore weird stuff from the past bit, and Numenera Destiny, which gives you a lot of tools for sort of seizing the destiny of this 9th world, but to become a great civilization in its own right. It's very cool. And that has brought in some a really cool crafting system. How do you giving you, for people who want to I want to build stuff, there's some elegant rules about salvaging and finding the weird components and building them into something new. And so I don't know if there'll exactly be a crafting subsystem or anything in Arcana of the Ancients, but I think we'll at least have to talk about as you pull this spark plug and you hook it up to this weird tentacle thing, that's sort of how ciphers get made, is you sort of, pulling stuff together in really hacked together ways. So I although there probably won't be, I don't think would have too much to say about crafting your own spells. We probably will have some stuff to say about how do you engage with all this weird tech that you're finding and janking together. So I'm excited to see that.
I could even see if you were incorporating this sort of stuff long term in your campaign, then you might have wizards and the who see the effect of a cipher and are
oh yeah,
oh, how can I do that? Right? How do I turn that into a spell?
Mm-hmm.
And then you could maybe sort of work on it that way. I could definitely see something like that where it's or even a whole sort of a caster who's inspired by the effects that they can create by plugging in all these ancient bits of arcane technology together.
That'll be really fun. Weird uses of Big B's, grasping fist or whatever to pull that chunk of enormous technological monstrosity over here. Weird. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. More tools to get into trouble with.
Yeah,
I am excited. Ooh.
Yeah. But yes, that was, and what a great just summary of Numenera, because every time that I try go to talk about Numenera and just the 9th world in general, there's always a part of it that I forget a big sort of because it's so vast and ancient, but also has a strange sort of familiarity to it. I was in the influences of just sort of media influences for this style of gaming opens up a lot of other just interesting possibilities for play and interesting locations to visit.
Yeah, because you take your favorite sci-fi setting and then just imagine 500,000 years after that civilization goes away, but all the bits that you love, you find the pieces of that. You find part of a rangefinder motion detector from Alien. You find a piece of David.
now that I basically learned to GM through the Numenera core book. Like that Numenera was a setting I just fell so in love with, and the art was so amazing, and the system was just a really Goldilocks zone of sort of narrative control for me back when that came out. And so I was like, oh, I can't force anyone to run this for me, so I had to learn how to GM. And so I've been been a big fan of the Cypher system in Numenera, and then they hired me, so now I'm an official fangirl. But and, once you start thinking in the terms of ciphers and in terms of weird tech, it's fun to see the magic in the technology around us too. Like, do I really know how that microwave works? What would I think this was if I stumbled upon it? And also, like, the ciphers, the idea of sort of hacked together one use magic items. I look for those in my media a lot now for inspiration, and just because I can't turn that part of my brain off. So, like, Guardians of the Galaxy, like, man, Star-Lord is constantly pulling and goodness, I'm forgetting his name, Rocket. Yeah, they're constantly pulling out random ciphers that are highly unstable, and of course, and so
it probably calls them to act erratically.
Exactly. So I think once you turn on your cipher brain, it will never turn off, and it's really fun.
Yeah. To me, like, the quintessential like Numenera cipher moment is the opening scenes of Force Awakens.
Yes.
Where it's Rey in the crashed Star Destroyer that's like already being partially covered by the sand, and it's like pulling out old spark plugs and power cells, and then like the bread sponge.
Yes.
Right. And it's just this kind of survival by the scraps of prior technology. It appeals to me a lot because I love post-apocalyptic stuff, and it's a great. It's just there's a lot of great inspiration out there. Spice up the games.
And people can finally understand why Cable has such insane guns with all the levers and the dials and everything. It's from the future.
Yep.
All those pockets are full of ciphers.
So
pockets are just full of ciphers. And of course, if you carry too many ciphers, it makes your feet all kind of almost like melt off. So they don't even look like feet, really.
Yeah.
Just kind of look like little points that you walk around on. Anyway.
You're gonna bring
your
back
cipher limits is what I'm saying. People stick to them.
This is a PSA.
Right.
More you know.
Oh god. All right. So so we have from Dan S. Another similar question. What would a GM who wants to implement Arcana of the Ancients to traditional fantasy setting find useful and revokable? That's sort of the whole book, is like how to incorporate it. Whether, as Darcy was saying earlier, through a series of adventures or a piecemeal as you take the monsters and ciphers, as well as advice. So
advice, equipment, beasts. Yep. So it'll have it's a big supplement with lots of tools at your disposal. So I suspect a little bit of sort of some mechanical things that flourishes that you can implement or not too. So.
Oh yeah. Let's see. No, William Cochran, you have not missed it. We are making an announcement. MCG and WebGM are teaming up to write the intro to Arcana of the Ancients. And right now we're just having a good time talking about it.
Messing around.
Yeah, we're approaching an hour here. So, I mean, how much longer y'all want to chat?
Well, I could go for a little bit longer. Let's see if anyone else has anything more to add or ask. But Sir
Lags a Lot, which is a great name, by the way. Are there new materials that react differently or with special qualities, ergo adamantine weapons and armor, for example?
Oh, I would definitely expect that. Some of the new stuff that's come in the new Numenera core books, because we were really dove into, hey, what does it look like when you yank that strange floating pharaoh fluid out of that machine it was supposed to be a part of and dump it into this other weird contraption you've made. We've laid out a lot of different like kinds of componentry you can find, or kinds of iotum, basically, weird magic-y component stuff that you can, the go juice, the stuff that's seems to have a lot of the actually important properties that you want to put into a device, and you sort of build the nuts and bolts around it, right? So I would definitely expect to find, like synth is a major material in the Ninth World, and that's sort of, it's kind of like, it's kind of like plastic. It can, it has some like bendy properties, but it's much stronger along the lines of like some hard metal. And so you find a lot of synth steel is also exists. So there, some of these materials I would definitely expect to find some new options and descriptions of in the book.
Yeah, I always imagine synth steel and all the synth materials in Numenera to be like, it's like, we have carbon fiber now. We had fiberglass before. So now we're carbon fiber. Think like 10 generations down from that. What would it be like? And it's like, well, it could be as flexible as paper and still be bulletproof. That's the kind of stuff that I think of when I think of synth steel. If it's thicker than like if it's thicker than an atom, like that's armor. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. I was scrolling up. Someone, Crimson Hawk 52 was asking, what is your best game ever about?
Yeah.
We recently signed up for Arcana of the Ancients Kickstarter. I was curious about it. So I'm also excited about your best game ever, which I thought I heard in an interview was in like the final finishing touches, maybe.
Absolutely. So your best game ever is awesome. This is a big book on, it is a tool book, not a rule book, for RPG gamers of both players, GMs, experienced gamers, and people who are newer to the hobby. And it's basically a book full of like actionable advice, ideas, tools, troubleshooting tips, even recipes for like game night and stuff. And so it's a book that deals with, what I love about this hobby is that there are so many skills that can come together to make you a better gamer, a GM, a player, a person who hosts. You can get into voice acting. You can get into thinking about storycraft. You can get into being a really good improviser or riffing off of each other. All these things are skills that you can build, and that your expertise will never stop growing. Right? You can always expand in some way or another. And so this is the book that really lays out a lot of tangible advice for, getting better at player craft, getting better at GM craft, sort of early beginner tips, stuff you might not think about, like, arrange, like how to host a game night, right? What are the logistics you should think about? Just someone who's coming to this for the first time, there's a lot you have to kind of get in order. And this book sets out to make it really easy and accessible. And what's really cool is we brought in a bunch of consulting experts to kind of weigh in on it. And so there will be little sections on oh goodness, a whole bunch of folks are going to kind of weigh in with their advice. So a number of streamers, some other designers and folks. There's going to be some cartoons in there from and Doggos and Dork Tower and all sorts of good stuff like that. So it's basically a book that we think will be exciting for any gamer in the hobby. And we think it'll be really helpful for people who I think who want to, in book form, or want to sort of have another resource, who see great gaming online and want to figure out how to make that happen at their games, and how to make each of their games, their high points higher and more often, which is, I think, a lot of the goal of kind of the WebDM channel too. I feel like that's a resource people go to. They go, I'm newer to this hobby, or I'm interested in expanding my expertise in this way. I think it's going to be a great resource for that sort of thing. So that's your best game ever. It's coming really soon, like probably this summer. I also heard a release date question about Arcana of the Ancients. And I think the date we were looking at was like spring 2020. I think that should still be relevant. Depending on, if this book doubles in size, it might take a little longer to come out. But so far we've been adding some pretty discrete units and instead creating additional books, which I think is great. So hopefully that release date estimate will hold.
Cool.
So soon. That feels soon to me. I don't know. I feel like I'm living in the future.
Like right around the corner. The thing that I like the most about like your best game ever is because a lot of those things were like when I was coming up in the hobby, if you pretty much, it was all like, if you had to know somebody who was running a game to even figure out how it was supposed to work.
Right.
So the first few times I ran a game, I was like, I don't even know what this is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Like there was an example of like play, there was always like that 2-page spread. It was like a, skit. And so like for me, it was a lot of stumbling. It was a lot of like, oh, that was a bad, or like, I can't believe the DM did this. And it was only like, because I was stubborn and just had to play this game.
Yeah.
and it wasn't until much later I realized, like, gosh, there's a lot of people who have those experiences, and that's it. They're done. They don't want to do this anymore. And being able to like distill the best practices of the hobby in all their variety.
Yes.
And there's not just one way of doing it, and there's not one way of doing it for one person, right? Like I don't run every game the same way. Distilling that in a book and like saying like, here's a supplementary rule book that can work for any game you play. That's what I love about it. So yeah, excited about that one. I've seen a couple of other questions. Especially I want to just clarify or give us an opportunity to clarify. We're not sure yet, like all of the different details of like what kind of player options are going to be in Arcana PH. All that's still up in the air. Seen a lot of questions about it, but
if you have specific asks, like just like with your best game ever, you know, especially that one when we kickstarted that book, we listened a lot to like, okay, and you know, we spent you can find out a lot about what people are looking for by checking forums, right? For the most common problems that you see that newer players are finding, or some of the bigger asks that experienced players are asking. But we definitely listen to folks. If you give us comments or kind of let us know on social media if there's specific things you're looking for, we are definitely. It's starting to coalesce now that we know it's going to happen, but we are definitely in the crafting stages of it. So let us know if you have some details that you're really looking forward to.
Yeah. Let's see, Mike. I don't know. I will play with you guys whenever I have a spare minute to play. I know I haven't had a chance to play with Mike yet. So
Mike,
except for some charity games on his channel. Unmade Gaming, folks, is in the channel. Mike's with us. So hopefully, I don't know what convention you're going to be at next.
Ooh.
We'll wait for that.
Yeah.
Probably game hole for me.
Oh, cool.
They take a lot out of me. Another one. Oh gosh, how do me and Emma manage to find time for anything with the youngin'? Well, we don't mostly. We have a very generous. I have a very generous mother-in-law who loves her grandson and is always willing to just watch him for a while.
Yeah.
And we have a very tight schedule. So, yeah, young kids. There you go. All right, that was the choice we made.
Good on you, man. Good on you for it.
Do what?
I said it. Good on you for it.
Yes. Yes. So let's see here. Anything else?
It's also people asking about time, if there's going to be space-time magic.
That's, I think, I think maybe those details are still up in the air.
Yeah, that's, but you had kind of already covered that.
Mm.
And then somebody's like, 1 billion years in the future. Like, yes, that's kind of where Numenera's set.
That's where Numenera's set.
Yep. Yeah. And that's science tells us that I can never remember if it's the Earth is going to be untenably hot for life or untenably cold for life at that point. But clearly some celestial rearrangement has happened and a lot of other stuff in 1 billion years. So
it's not even the same solar system. Like there's planets missing.
Missing Mercury, I think. Yeah.
At least Mercury. There's a second or third moon around Earth. Or something.
Yeah, there's some more orbitals.
And the first moon is green sometimes, as in it might have forests and the like. So it's all kinds of Earth, but different. Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't, just read Tales of a Dying Earth. I mean, it's pretty much like right there. I mean, the adventures going around, finding old cities, finding old technology, people hoarding that kind of stuff. I mean, like that's a good way to kind of look at it.
We've got some free quick starts on our website too at montecookgames.com. There's two free Numenera like quick start rule and adventures with pre-gens, and I think that gives you a taste of kind of the setting and the art. And so if you're really excited about that setting aspect of it, there's some stuff to go check out.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'd say, I mean, a lot of these things are like, from a setting perspective, they're like big concepts, but from the perspective of like running games and playing, you don't necessarily have to know like all the ways in which it's different or changed, unless you just like to know because you like that. Yeah. But yeah, obviously the something has happened within the solar system and the world of Numenera to stop these forces from working, and the sun's still around, and the Earth's still there. and genetically modern humans are also there. So
perplexing on itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking some kind of clone vat popped open at some point. Who knows?
Yeah.
I will say I was thinking today, Darcy, about the Iron Wind and how it could possibly have been created. And I like one of the ideas that I came up with.
Ooh, I want to hear.
That the moon that orbits the Earth that controlled the tides was lost. And so we had to create something internally. So we created an internal, like a gyroscopic system to create an internal momentum.
Sweet.
That eventually, after all this technology kind of broke down and started like falling, started getting caught up in that momentum. So that is where the Iron Wind comes from, is just the leftover inertia from this machine that's at the core of the planet, still going. But,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I'll just tell
I should have been focusing on pharmacy work, but what are you going to
do? So it's just a really cool, and when you start exploring those concepts of like planetary engineering or like engineering on a cosmological scale, and then incorporating that into your adventures, you start visiting like Dyson spheres and traveling to the heart of stars, because there's structures there that you need to go investigate.
I had one of those in my campaign that they just have spent the last 4 adventures at a Dyson sphere that was created out of adamantine.
There you
go. I think we've gotten to most of the questions, so I might have one last question for you two, if that's okay. Could you give me a taste of like some mashup you're particularly excited for kind of like traditional fantasy D&D and Arcana? Is there like a what's the scene that we close out on your character and or some bit of D&D Arcana business?
Here's one for me. Where the players are introduced to the Arcana of the Ancients is where they figure out that necrotic damage is actually just radioactivity, and actually find like something that has leaked deep within the earth, and that is where all the necrotic energy is coming from, and it's just over time has poisoned, and it creates, that's where undead are created because of its effect on the genetics of people. But like something like that, where it's a fantasy damage type or whatever. But because I've always thought like what is necrotic or radiant energy, and I think it's some version of like radioactivity,
right?
Just that's why you can't feel like all of a sudden you're just melting, and you don't know why, because you're being unmade.
Oh my gosh!
But something like that.
That's beautiful.
That's the mashup I like.
So for me, I'm my mashup is like you're on the world. You're on your sort of like it's traditional fantasy, but aesthetically it's not quite. It's not like white castles and pennants and damsels in distress and like. But there's some sort of threat or something, and it turns out that the castle that makes up home base is an ancient spacefaring vessel, and its original pilots or crew or people from the original have returned, and you're the descendants of the crashed sort of crew that were there. And you're reunited, and it's like you can go. And I love planetary romance, right? Just like the traveling to different worlds and the swashbuckling adventure of it all. And as you sort of like take off the dirt and vegetation shaking loose from the spaceship fortress to go adventure amongst the stars with your people reunited. And that's sort of that's kind of what I'm digging. Yeah.
Well, Jim, like
somewhere between Voltron and there's this Russian artist. I don't know his name. I wish I did, but it's like these great pictures of like these spaceships. They're covered in trees and moss, and the people there are sort of like a traditional Russian peasant garb, but the implication is that they're from the descendant of ancient astronauts kind of things. So that's the campaign I'm thinking of.
What episode of Doctor Who is it? Because there's that one where the spaceship is caught in the black hole, event horizon of the black hole. So at the top, the nose of the ship, the crew's still trying to repair it, and at the bottom, it's like 20,000 years in the future because time is moving.
And every level is sort
like
of like
something like that. Like I would love.
That's
I would
very
love
Arcana of the Ancients. It's very Numenera.
Yes.
Love it.
Very much so. Very much so.
I think I'm like imagining myself as some explorer character, some like Lara Croft, Rey from The Force Awakens type, like holding up some weird piece of ancient tech that I've gotten, and like being sassing off to some dragon that like I have found tech that they don't, even their long-lived memory doesn't even know about, and I promptly get eaten. I feel like that's the quintessential Darcy science fantasy mashup.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, so folks can find out more. You can get to the Kickstarter and information about Arcana of the Ancients, which these wonderful folks are writing the intro to. You can go mymcg.info/webdmarcana. And yeah, the Kickstarter ends April 12th. So we would love it if you joined us. We would love to hear what you're looking for in the book, because we can still shape that. And we're hoping we can see where this Kickstarter goes, because we've already funded some extra books, which I'm really excited about. So thanks for having me on, folks.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Here. Thanks for bringing us in on this project. It's beyond an honor.
Don't mess it up.
No pressure.
Now we will assuredly mess it up. But anyway, so everyone who tuned in today, thanks for joining us here. And if you're just watching later on YouTube, hey, if you made it this far, it's because you love a good, fun conversation and cats, because I have trained mine. I've trained them well. And you too can learn this in Arcana of the Ancients, the secrets to cats. But anyway, we'll let you go. That's the April Fool's part of this. But check out Cat People on WebDM this Wednesday. Yes. We'll give you that little tidbit if you've been hanging out. Some insider info there. But other than that, have a good one. Have good gaming. And as always, may the dice ever roll in your favor.